welcome to the Sports Note for Saturday, July 1st, and we're now officially into silly season in both the NBA and the NHL because it is the opening day of free agency for both leagues. We saw in the NBA that Damian Lillard wants out of Portland. He's asked for a trade within the last 24 hours. We've seen Kyrie Irving re-sign with Dallas. We've seen that James Harden opted into his player option, and there's still a possibility that he gets moved out of Philadelphia. Very, very interesting package there. But then we shift over to the NHL, and things, even though we don't have the massive level of names that we did out of the blocks last year, because remember last year we, the one shock that everybody was like, where did that come from? Was Johnny Gaudreau going from the Calgary Flames to the Columbus Blue Jackets. But I mean, we've seen a couple of pretty significant moves, but again, nothing that's really jumping off the page as of yet. We've seen defenseman Connor Clifton and Eric Johnson sign with the Buffalo Sabres to shore up the back half of their blue line because really outside of the Sabres' the top line of Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, a couple of former number one picks, they've got a couple of role players in there. So now you've got some veteran leadership with a little bit of aggression to them. The New York Islanders went out and didn't really grab anybody, and still in the wake of the Bo Horvat trade from last year at the deadline, but then signing Pierre Engvall, Ilya Sorokin, Simeon Varlamov, and Scott Mayfield to long-term deals. Each one of those was at least 4 years, and the surprising thing is that Varlamov was a 4-year deal. Everybody else was 6 or 7, I want to say, but Varlamov was a name that was rumored to maybe get shipped to where he could be a solid number 2 behind somebody. We've seen Dmitry Orlov and Michael Bunting go to the Carolina Hurricanes like they need them, to be honest. So Carolina's going for broke right now to try and win another Stanley Cup. The big surprise really out of the last 48 hours was at the start of the day today, Ryan O'Reilly leaves the Toronto Maple Leafs and heads to the Nashville Predators of all things, because there was a lot of talk that the St. Louis Blues were going to bring Ryan O'Reilly back after trading him at the deadline for a whole host of assets, which they ended up with 3 good young players in the first round of the NHL draft just a couple of days ago, and we're going to get back to the draft here in just a moment. Alex Killorn leaves the Tampa Bay Lightning, heads to Anaheim. Tristan Jarry signs for re-ups for 5 years in Pittsburgh as their number 1. And the most surprising thing really just after the draft were the Nashville Predators announcing that they were going to buy out the final 3 years of Matt Duchene's contract, essentially paying him to go elsewhere at that point. And then Duchene signed a 1-year deal earlier today with the Dallas Stars, just making them that much stronger after a strong playoff performance themselves. But the one team that really also has not gone out and made a free agent splash, considering how much cap room that they have right now, are the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, the Blackhawks really didn't need to, because the Blackhawks they're certainly not going to be able to go out and sign. It's not like they can go out and they can sign a massive free agent or bring Patrick Kane back or anything and be right back into the playoffs. The Blackhawks are at least 2 to 3 years away from contending at this particular point. Alex DeBrincat was moved last year and is probably going to get moved again here in the next few days, they're talking, because the 1 year he had in Ottawa did not go up to snuff. Even though that they were very close to the playoffs. I want to say that they were 4 or 5 points out of final playoff spot in the East. And there's a state of flux with the Senators, with their new ownership coming into the fold starting next year, as they were just sold last week. They did go out and sign Jonas Corposalo today, so it's a very good pickup for them to shore up between the pipes as a number one starter there with Cam Talbot coming off of injury, and I can't think of the other gentleman's name because I know he used to actually play in Cleveland here for the minor league franchise for the Blue Jackets for a while, and I don't think it was Elvis Merzlikins. Anton Forsberg, that's it. And Forsberg coming off of double hip surgery. But DeBrincat was on the way out. They moved Patrick Kane at the deadline, sent him to the Rangers, and then the Rangers go out in the first round to the New Jersey Devils, and then you have Jonathan Toews, quite honestly, who hasn't been right in the last couple of years and missed a very big portion of the second half of last year with injury. There's a lot of people who are thinking that there could be still a possibility that Jonathan Toews retires because the Blackhawks did not renew his contract. So Jonathan Toews is technically an unrestricted free agent as free agency opens today. So they are not picking up his bloated contract. They moved off of Patrick Kane's bloated contract. But earlier this week, the Blackhawks, who had the number one pick, put the entire fate of the franchise now to get back to where they were in the hands of a 17-year-old Connor Bedard. Now, Bedard doesn't turn 18 for a couple of weeks. I want to say it's either the 17th or the 18th of this month. And then the Hawks went out and traded on Thursday for former Hart Trophy winner Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno from the Boston Bruins. Now, Foligno went out and signed a one-year deal with the Bruins for about $4 million. Taylor Hall signed a 4-year contract after coming over to the Bruins in a trade with the Buffalo Sabres a couple of years ago, and he still has 2 years left on that deal where it's a $6 million cap hit, but he's owed $13 million on that deal with incentives and roster bonuses and signing bonus money in there. But let's call it what it is that you've got an 18-year-old kid who's going to be coming into to be put in a position where he's got to bring back one of the most prominent franchises of the last 20 years, certainly of this millennium. The best option that they have right now is hoping that Hall can find some of the magic that won him the Hart Trophy in Edmonton. Or I'm sorry, it might have been in Phoenix at that point. But really, since his last season in Phoenix, he signs the 1-year deal with Buffalo. He gets traded midway through the year as that season went up in flames very quickly. And a lot of that was between Hall's injury and then also an injury to the Jack Eichel injury. And then really was good, but certainly not what the Bruins were paying him six plus per year the first 2 years to do. Hall at times was, you didn't know where he was watching the Bruins, especially in the playoffs. The few games that I did watch of that Florida Boston series, I don't remember him really being called all that often or contributing all that much. The thing with Chicago is they're in a very precarious situation right now. As we saw that there's really a state of uneasiness and unrest and uncertainty with the Blackhawks franchise. They finished tied with Columbus for the second worst record in the league, and they were only 1 point better than Anaheim for worst, where you had Boston, where you had Chicago picking 1, Anaheim went 2, and Columbus went 3 in the draft earlier this week, and all 3 have their guys basically ready to go. I want to say that Adam Fantilli with the Blue Jackets, who was picked at third overall, has already been signed, and they're already talking that he's not even going to spend time in Cleveland. They're just going to throw him straight to the Wolves with the Blue Jackets next year, try and pair him up with Johnny Gaudreau, and see if they can accelerate their rebuild, which seemingly has been going for 20 years outside of that one magical run where they knocked out the Lightning where they swept the Lightning in the first round back in 2019. But the Blackhawks franchise is certainly not one that people are going to be pulling for nearly as much as, let's say, when Pittsburgh went bankrupt, and then there was strong rumor that the Penguins were going to end up moving to Kansas City out of their bankruptcy. Sure enough, Mario Lemieux, gets the arena deal in Pittsburgh. They have Sidney Crosby fall directly into their lap, and then end up getting Evgeny Malkin the following year. It was very Edmonton-like, where Edmonton went Hall, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and I'm drawing a blank on who the third one was, where Edmonton got 3 number 1 picks, got the number 1 overall pick either 3 years in a row or 3 out of 4 years, somewhere in there. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, surprisingly enough, still with the franchise and still contributing. But it's also a matter that there's a lot of people around the hockey world, this guy included, and even and it's got really nothing to do with my fandom of that team right there. But there's a lot of people that hope that the Blackhawks are essentially the NHL's version of a broken mirror, and they have nothing but bad luck for at least the next 7 years after the mishandling and everything that's come out over the last 18 months in the Kyle Beach sexual assault scandal. And we've talked about it on the Wise Guys show. I've talked about it on this show, but just as a quick refresher, Kyle Beach was a prospect within the Blackhawks organization. He was a member of their 2010 championship team, but was also there were allegations of sexual assault by the Blackhawks video coach with that team, and the Blackhawks really did nothing about it. Owner Rocky Wirtz essentially threw a bunch of money at this to kind of sweep it under the rug, so it didn't come out until after the Hawks had won Game 6 of the 2010 Finals on their home ice, dispatching Philadelphia in overtime, and then after the parade and everything. So win another cup, pay it off, and then we'll deal with the repercussions later. This might be the worst handled scandal of Gary Bettman's tenure as commissioner of the NHL, even more so than trying to get hockey to work in the desert, because now the Arizona Coyotes are now going to be looking for a third or fourth barn in the greater Phoenix area in the last 5 or 6 years at this particular point. But there should be no joy if you're a Blackhawks fan, if you're a realist. There's even the third member of the Wise Guys elite, Alex Ruiz, is from Chicago, and I asked him point blank on one of our most recent shows where he was on, is does it taint that championship now that you go back and look at it as everything's come out in recent years? And he says it kind of does, as a Chicagoan, where he's got 3 parades and then the Cubs World Series title really in the last 10 to 12 years here. But I'm certainly not hoping that Connor Bedard flames out and is like a Nail Yakupov bust as the number one overall pick, but I'm certainly hoping he's a lot closer to Yakupov as a member of the Blackhawks than like a Connor McDavid has been breathing life back into the Edmonton Oilers franchise. And there's also, the other talks out there of recent number one overall picks that Rasmus Dahlin was a finalist for the Norris Trophy this year, finished third. After taking dramatic strides with the Sabres. Owen Power looks like he could be a finalist with the for the Norris Trophy with the Sabres in the coming years. Alex Lafreniere with the Rangers is talking about it. They're talking about shopping him already. Just a few short years after drafting him, with the way that the Rangers went out and tried to buy up of Vladimir Tarasenko, Patrick Kane, and that blew up in their face dramatically. And Lafreniere has not been what they expect a number one pick to be in terms of his production. He's a solid player, but he's not jump off the page like a Crosby, a McDavid, what the Blackhawks are hoping for with Connor Bedard. It's going to be also interesting to see, with Chicago still having about $21 million in cap room right now going into the start of free agency today, what they do with that. Do they get other guys to fill out? Do they actually try and take a swing at one of these big guys, one of these big names still out there, to maybe accelerate things a little bit? There was talk that I heard one or two rumblings that they might actually put a package together or whatnot and try and see if they could take a swing at Connor Hellebuck after his tenure with the Winnipeg Jets is essentially done. Connor Hellebuck is a great goaltender. He's one of the top 5 goaltenders in the league. But I'm sorry, by getting Connor Hellebuck into there, especially as loaded as the Central Division is, between Colorado, Dallas, even though Winnipeg's going to come way back, you've now actually got to push Nashville a little bit further ahead. The Blues are in their rebuild mode. But going out and getting Kevin Hayes in that trade with the Flyers the other day and not having to give up Torrey Krug to do it, although I still think that the Blues are going to end up moving at least one or two key aspects with all the guys that they have signed that have no trade or no movement clauses, and Krug is one of them because they've got an identical guy a year younger making about $1 million, a little over $1 million less in Nick Leddy. So you don't need two guys on the same roster doing the same thing with the same no movement clause for that level of money. Let's be honest, both on your blue line. But the Blues could potentially push for a playoff spot after getting Kevin Hayes, providing that the general manager Doug Armstrong doesn't go out and sell off Colton Parayko, which is the last key component outside of Jordan Binnington in net of their 2019 championship team. So the Blues could be playoff bound next year, but there's a lot of ground that the Blackhawks have to make up in that division, and they're starting to trend the right way. But as an outside fan, and even looking at it as a human being, they are now the team that you pay to watch lose. Kind of like how a John Jones would be in MMA. They're the guy that you pay that hope that they go out and they get their ass kicked. The only difference is Jones goes out and wins his fights, even though he doesn't actually win them cleanly, as has been the pattern over his career. The Blackhawks are still going to be a very bad team for the next couple of years, and I'm just going to sit back with my popcorn and enjoy it. So let me know what you guys think down below. What did you guys think of the first day of free agency? Was there a move that kind of surprised you? Is there somebody out there that you could still see signing or getting moved that you would actually sit back and think, that doesn't surprise me at all? So Mike and I will be back with you on Monday night for the Wise Guys. I believe Alex is going to be with us, and then there's also rumblings that Mike and I could be doing a second show next week. I want to say next Friday or next Saturday. So we will certainly let you guys know about that. Double check our Facebook pages because we all know that if you're scrolling through Twitter for more than 10 or 15 minutes, now you're not going to be able to look at it very much longer. Yeah, thank you, Elon, you dipshit. Although I really am starting to think that they screwed something up with their programming and their coding, and that's what they're saying. And then watch in a couple of days, they come out and they said, due to an issue on our part, we've actually changed our course from Backlash. So they're saying this now, but I'm willing to bet that they screwed up something with the code, and this is their excuse to kind of cover it up. So I will be back with you next week, and we will see you guys. We will see you all hopefully on Monday night. Take care.